It's a funny story or an excuse. Let's call it a funny story. Hello, welcome. My name is Stephanie, and on this channel, I like talking about houseplants. In today's video, I'll be talking about the new houseplants that I got for the month of April. I do this video about once a month or so. I tend to go on a lot of plant shopping videos, and honestly, I don't buy something every single time. So it's like plant window shopping, except it's not in a window. Plant browsing. But anyways, in some of those videos, in some of them, at some of those shopping trips, I actually do pick up a few things. So in today's video, I'll be sharing some of the new houseplants that I acquired for this month. If you watched my recent plant wish list and ditch list video, this one will make a lot more sense because I was able to acquire some of my wish list plants. So without any more delay, let's get started. The first plant I'll talk about is one that I've been looking for quite a while now. It's not very easily available or very widely available where I'm located. I was able to find some, but they didn't look very healthy. You know, they didn't look like very good choices. So I decided to wait, and that's the lesson here. If the plants that you want don't look as healthy as you'd like, just wait. Just wait, depending on the plant, of course. But for this one, I'm glad I waited, and I was able to get a very healthy pothos. This is a Mangula Pothos. So this one has been on my list for a few months now, and I love this plant. I'm very excited to have been able to get a nice healthy version. This one does have a few, not perfect leaves. Not every leaf is perfect, but what I appreciate about it is that it's overall a very healthy plant. So the Mangula Pothos is from the Epipremnum. I can never say that properly, but it's from the Pothos family. Let's say that, the Epipremnum family. And what I like about it is it's a pothos, but it looks different than your average pothos. It has bigger leaves from the get-go. The leaves tend to be bigger than your typical pothos when you buy them, and it has this gorgeous variegation, this green and white and sometimes green variegation that I really enjoy. And I didn't like the curled leaves before, but now that I'm not as scared as I once was of pests, I am not as scared of the curled leaves. I actually enjoy them a little bit more now, but I'm very excited to get it. I love the cream, white, and green. I really like this. And it's just a simple, good-looking plant. I'll also insert some clips of when I first got it. So I've had it for a little while now, not a little while, maybe almost a week. I've had it for almost a week, so I'll insert some clips of when I did get it. But since then, I have put it into my homemade aeroid mix, and it does have soil in it. So it's not a soilless mix. There is a little bit of soil, but not a whole lot. But it's mostly a little bit of potting soil, coconut husks, and perlite in here. So far so good. It hasn't been in here for that long, but it's doing well, and it's growing up on my highest shelf here, my top shelf. And here it's right next to a south-facing sliding door, and there's a grow light up top. And so I think it will be happy there, and hopefully it can start growing. And the plan is to eventually let it grow upward. I think I'm in my pole era, and I hope to have a few of my plants, including this one, climb a pole and let it get those big, beautiful leaves. I'm not going to do that with all of my plants, but there are just a select few plants that I'm hoping to do that with. So this one was actually not on my wish list. It's a funny story. Is it? Is it really? Or an excuse? Let's call it a funny story. Anyways, I went on a recent plant shopping trip, and by now you would have seen that shopping trip video. And when I went, there was this plant and another one of my wishlist houseplants there. And I thought, what do I do? Because I always said, if I cannot find my wishlist houseplants, then, and I found this one, I would take it, I would get it until I can get my wishlist plants. But they were both there. So I wasn't sure what to do. But this one was a great price, and so I picked it up. And this is a Philodendron Florida Ghost. And it is a tiny one at that. But if I know one thing about philodendrons, they do not take a long time to grow. They are fast growers if you give them water, if you feed them well, and you give them lots of light. Granted, I've never had a Florida Ghost before, but I have a strong feeling that it would grow well for me. This plant, again, I'll show you some clips of when I first got it. It wasn't that much smaller than what it looks like now. It probably looks pretty much the same. And they were quite tiny, but I decided to get it because I'm not sure when I will see this plant again. And also, they're tiny but healthy. So I think it looks pretty good. If you see some dirt on it, I really try to wash it off, but yeah. Anyways, it has these gorgeous white leaves. Gorgeous. And the way the Florida Ghost works is that the leaves will start off this way, and then eventually they will harden off into a darker green color. What I'm not sure about is how dark, for example, a very bright leaf like this, I'm not sure how dark green this leaf will become. So that's what's interesting and intriguing about this plant, is that it can look different. It reminds me, and it behaves a lot like my Philodendron Jose Buono. I've talked about this plant a million times. It's actually one of my current favorites, and it behaves the exact same way. The newest leaves will come out with variation, very light, very white, very cream variation, and then as it hardens off to this green color. And that's what I love about it, because then not every leaf will not look exactly the same. Every leaf will look a little bit different and a little bit lighter, a little bit darker green. All depends on how much light the plant is getting when the leaf is emerging. So yes, I don't like duplicates in my collection, but once again, I feel like the look between this one and the next one that I'm going to talk about are distinct enough to justify. And it's in this beautiful, tiny little, adorable little size that I love. I love having the joy of growing plants from this tiny little size to big, beautiful plants. So I'm excited to see this grow. And if you'd like to see how I fare with this plant, follow along for the journey. And I'll definitely be posting pictures of it on my social media. On Instagram, I'm at LucianSteph. There you'll be able to get more recent pictures of my plants. And what I did for this one is when I removed it from the potting soil, and please, if it's one thing it occurred to me that I wanted to share with you, my viewers, as I unpotted this. A lot of times, a lot of nurseries, what they will do, especially uncommon to rare plants, I've noticed that they will put these very tiny plants in huge pots. So I think it came in a 4-inch pot. Like, really? A 4-inch pot for this tiny little thing? There was so much soil in there that it would have been only a matter of time before I overwatered this plant. And also, have you seen that sometimes the plants can come in these mesh? So in a plug, that's what it's called. So sometimes when you get a plant, a new plant, when you repot it, so as you remove all the soil that comes from the greenhouse, as you get closer and closer to the root ball, so where all the roots are contained, a lot of times you'll notice that maybe the growers will put them in this mesh, this fabric that you sort of have to peel away off the roots so the roots can breathe and just grow. This plant didn't even have a mesh. It was in some form of a sponge, soil colored sponge. So just think of your dish sponge, but much more dense and compact. And it was a nightmare to get the roots out of that sponge, because the roots, as you can imagine, would grow through the little holes in the sponge. But if I find a picture of it online, I will show it. If not, let's use our imagination. But I did not like that, and I'm so glad that I went at it and I took it out of that pot. First of all, too much soil. Second of all, that sponge. But anyways, hopefully it's much happier in this mix. And this is Molly's Aeroid Potting Mix. And I got this off of Amazon. I was debating whether to get the Molly's Aeroid Potting Mix or Pon, and I got both. And I'm very surprised. I actually much prefer the Aeroid Potting Mix over Pon, which is like the Pon right now is like, well, at one point, maybe I'm late, but everyone was talking about Pon. I actually preferred the Aeroid Potting Mix. And since this is an Aeroid, I decided to put it into this. But anyways, I'm really babbling, but I just thought I'd share that with you. So when you get new plants, take a look at what's under the hood. Go into the roots and take a look, make sure that the roots can manage the amount of soil that it's in. How's the video going so far? Like what you see? If you do, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button down below, and you can subscribe. That way you'll be able to easily find my videos in the future. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, and the next plant, oops, I'm sitting on a plant. Don't do that. Don't sit on plants. It's my Philodendron Saloon, the one that has to go bye-bye. Anyways, next plant is Philodendron El Choco Red. And if you watch my wish list video, you already know this plant was definitely on my wish list for 2024. Yes, for 2024. And I'm very excited. As you can see, it's not in the most glamorous pot at the moment, but I will show you what it looked like when it first came. So you will see that it came, I believe, in a 4-inch pot. The nursery had a very healthy selection. It took me a long time to choose the one that I have now, but I am so happy with the one that I've ended up with. I ultimately, I would love to have a Philodendron verrucosum. That is the end game. That's the plant that I'm aiming for. But until then, because I've heard that one has a reputation of being challenging, I decided to practice on a Philodendron El Choco Red, which is said to be a lot easier to grow, but very similar to the Philodendron verrucosum. I love, even in its juvenile form, the contrast between the dark under the leaf, or the base of the leaf is dark, and then the very neon, the bright green colored veining in it. So this one isn't so neon, but as it matures, it becomes very pronounced and very bright, and I'm looking forward to when it does behave that way. But so far, I still think this very beautiful, and I love this one because it has so many. I couldn't even count how many growth points it has, and apparently that's very true behavior to the Philodendron El Choco Red. It tends to push out a lot of different growth points, and that's my kind of plant, a plant that automatically fills itself and makes itself look bushy and full. Yes, please. I love it. Much less work for me propagating and trying to stick it back into the pot to make it look fuller. I just love getting a full pot to begin with. And yes, if you'd like to see the video of when I picked this up, so a lot of these plants, actually all of these plants were purchased from one video in one shopping trip. Be sure to check out the video. I'll put it on the screen. But yes, I'm excited to introduce this El Choco Red in my collection, and it also had a lot of soil around it, but not as bad as some of the other plants I picked up. But again, I took it out of there and I put it into my own little setup of Soilless Potting mix, like arid mix, the same Molly's one, and I put it with a wick at the bottom, and I put it sort of in a self-watering pot setup. And lately, I'm not new to doing this, but I know I'm not the first person to do this. I know a lot of people do this, but this is new to me. This is something I've recently started doing, which is putting my plants in recyclable pots and containers. And honestly, this saves me so much money. I was telling my husband that, and he must have been so happy when I told him that. How much money it saves me to put them into these recyclable pots, especially when they're this tiny and I don't have pots that's small enough to put them in. And I don't know if I want to put them in pots that small. I think I prefer this because, I don't know, I have the joy of seeing the roots and not guessing and seeing how it's doing. I prefer that. That is just so much more satisfying to me. And I know it may not be the most prettiest thing for social media, but this is my hobby and this is how I do it for myself. This is how I like to do it, and to each their own. But I don't mind. Eventually, when it gets bigger, I'll put it in something like this or something else. But for now, especially for philodendron, and especially because the end game for me is to put it on a pole and sort of have it grow on the pole where all of the roots, the aerial roots, grow into the moss pole. That's the goal, because it doesn't have any aerial roots yet. So that's how juvenile this is. It's really just a baby. So I'm happy to keep it in here so I can easily monitor its growth with the health of the roots. And yeah, but that's it pretty much. That's it. Nothing much to say. I gave it a nice wash when I got it. I sprayed it with insecticidal soap and my little solution. And that's it. Right, and now it's time for the final plant of my haul. And I wonder if any of you guessed what plant it is, especially when I talked about the Philodendron Florida ghost. Did you guess? Did you make a guess? Write down your guess very quickly in the comments. I'll give you 5 seconds. There you go. Guess locked in? All right. The final plant is, yes, another wishlist plant, and it is the Philodendron Florida Beauty. If you guessed it, I don't know. I'll come and look for you in the comment section. But yes, it's the Philodendron Florida Beauty. This one is, I was so excited. It's interesting that I called the plant nursery before I went and asked what new plants they got, and they did not mention this. And when I got there, not only did I find the Florida Ghost, I found the Florida Beauty there as well. I was like, my brain, it froze for a second and I didn't know what to do. So as you can imagine, you saw what my decision was in the end, but I have no regrets. I loved, they had a great selection of this plant. Granted, they were on the smaller side, but they were small and healthy. Again, if you watch that video, you already know what I'm talking about. But this plant, I'm very happy with the specimen that I got. Okay, I'm very happy with what I got. It has large amounts of variegation, that bright cream variegation. And this is pretty much almost a half moon leaf. Gorgeous, but it has a very nice balance of variegation and green. And like I mentioned, I know this plant does have a tendency to revert. So I tried my very, very best to get a specimen that had high amounts of variegation in the petiole or on the stem. And so this was one of the highest, the ones with the most variegation in the petiole. So I decided to go with this one. But again, like I said, I wanted a decent balance because I want the plant to be able to make food. So we do have a few green leaves here, but we do have some pretty half moon leaves. And I love this one. Look at this one. It's almost minty. So there is a mint, there is dark green, there is cream. Very nice. And then the most recent fully unfurled leaf, this one, I'll give you a moment, is beautiful. These plants are just stunning, stunning, stunning. And hopefully it maintains this variegation. And it has a new leaf growing in at the base here. And so I'm very excited. I'm hoping for great things for this plant. And just as you can see, just like with all the others, I took it out of its pot. It was in a 4-inch pot as well. And just like the other one, it had that very spongy like plug around it. The pot was way too big for it. And again, I'm so glad I took it out of there and I put it in my trusty Molly's Arid potting mix. And I'm very happy with how it's looking. I'm very happy with how it's growing so far. As when I say with how it's growing, of course, it hasn't pushed out any new leaves for me as yet, but we haven't lost any leaves. So I will definitely take that as a win. and I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. It's in the aeroid mix with just a tiniest amount of water at the bottom, just the tiniest amount. I've put a like a plant label here so that it's not sitting in the water. It's not sitting, and it can drain off any excess water. And also I've created around here, I've put some holes into the cup. So I've put some holes into the cup so that the roots can still breathe. And that's one of the reasons why I put the label in here, so that air can still get in between the two cups. But that's how it looks for now. And again, as it gets bigger, I will eventually pot it up to the appropriate pot size and put it in something prettier and put a moss pole on it. That's my goal for this summer for a lot of my plants. And so I have about maybe 4 plants that I want to climb up on a moss pole. I'm not the biggest fan of moss poles, but I think I'm now, getting into I'm starting to want to see some of my plants on moss poles. So this is definitely one of them. So I'm very excited, very happy, and surprised how quickly I was able to get a very nice, healthy version of this plant. So yeah. And that's honestly it for all the plants that I got for the month of April. We still have a few days left in April. So if there's by some chance that I went out plant shopping and I got a new plant, I will insert the clip here. No, if I didn't insert any clip, that's all I got for this month. Still a great haul, right? Yes, I did make one more last minute stop to the plant shop. I was actually going to pick up veggies, small veggies for my garden, and they happened to have some caladiums in stock. So I decided to pick up this caladium. My son actually picked this one. This is a Caladium Carolyn Wharton, according to my online research. So I've told my son he could pick a plant, and finally we picked this one up for him. And he picked it, he said, because it doesn't have much white variegation. He was worried about the plant making food and photosynthesizing. So that was his choice. My pick was the Caladium, and I think this one is called an Autumn Beauty. I'm not sure. If you are sure, please leave me a comment down below. But I've had my eye out for this one, had my eye open for this one ever since I saw it in an indoor garden tour I did. Actually have a video of it. I know it's not a rare plant, but I just love the huge pink veining in the leaves. I just think it's gorgeous. And one thing I do know, I don't know much about Caladium, I only have one, but one thing I know is to avoid direct sunlight. As you can see with some of the leaves, they have holes in them, so they're very sensitive to bright sunlight because of their thin leaves. And so yeah, I'm going to give it a shady spot. I think I might actually put it outside in the summer, so I may not even take it out of this pot. And this pot I got has so many plants in it, but I just realized that it has an extra one growing there, and that huge leaf actually has a new leaf coming out of it. So there are so many plants in this. I hope to get a nice full pot. But yes, I'm going to put it in a north facing area in my entryway outside for the summer, and hopefully it'll grow well for me. And yeah, and this is honestly all that I got for this month. And now enjoy some footage of some close-ups of the plants that I picked up this month. Thanks for watching today's video. I appreciate you spending some of your day with me. If you liked this video, you may like some of these other videos here. I'll make sure that I insert the recent plant shopping video where I got these plants. I'll also add my houseplant collection tour in here as well, and you can subscribe by clicking over here. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you next time.